just kind of jump into it. Okay. Hello, Alice. I'm really excited about having you on the podcast. We were just chatting off air that we don't know exactly, but probably about 10 years or so ago we met, which is crazy.
Yes, and what a glorious day it was.
Yeah, we met through a mutual connection, and you at the time were creating these amazing conferences and had asked me to come and speak, which of course I said yes, and I still miss those conferences. They were amazing. And but you created a brand called Bellyfit. And when I first met you and heard about what you're doing, it resonated so much with me in terms of me at the time. I'd already been navigating pelvic health and fitness and how it was all going to, and how do we move, and how do I guide people through movement when they've been told that they can't move or they shouldn't do this or they shouldn't do that. And your program came along and it just ticked off so many of the boxes of what I felt would be a really well-rounded practice. So I would love to explore a little bit more about what brought you to creating this, and we can dive into more about the specifics, but tell us a little bit about you and what led you to create Bellyfit.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's so good to be here. The origin story, I don't really talk about how I started it much anymore because it's been over 16 years. But I do think it is relevant because I think a lot of women go through stuff like what I went through. And I mean, we create what we need, right? I know you created what you have created because you yourself needed it. And then you see, oh, wow, so many other women need it as well. And for me, I was a single mom. I was on welfare. I'd been in a really abusive, horrible relationship. And there I found myself with a 1-year-old all on my own. And it was super traumatizing. I was exhausted. I was dealing with addiction. I was depressed. I was angry, all the things. And it was literally one of those aha moments. You kind of wake up and you go, wow, I'm really spiraling. And for me, it was seeing how me spiraling was affecting my daughter. And so that was really the wake-up call. It was like, wow, my choices are really impacting her and could significantly, affect the rest of her life. And so I kind of literally picked myself up. And I was really fortunate at that time that I had a background in fitness. I had already been a certified fitness instructor. I had studied yoga pretty much my whole life. Both my parents are yogis, so I was really steeped in that culture as a child. I used to do Tai Chi on the lawn with my dad when I was like 5 years old. There's pictures of me like naked with he wasn't naked, I was naked, on the banks of this river where I grew up, totally idyllic. And I had also been a belly dancer. I had been a professional belly dancer performing at, all these different events. So that was my background. And then I found myself in this situation. And so I was able to sort of pull all of that experience out of the vault, if you will, and start moving my body. And it was really then that I realized, wow, I had completely disconnected from my body. And that was where my power was. So I was disconnected from my body. I was disconnected from my power, from my intuition, from my self-confidence. And as soon as I started moving my body in this sort of really intuitive, organic way, the depression started lifting, the anger started fading, the trauma started healing, my baby girl started responding positively. I attracted the love of my life into my world, who is now, my husband of 14 years and my business partner. So it was this huge realization of, if I'm not empowered in my body, in my life, everything around me is going to suffer. And so from that experience, I started creating this form of movement, which is now called Bellyfit.
I love it. I didn't know that part of your story.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
And you've touched on a few things. So again, when I first of all, one thing I'll just say, it was your voice. I remember you at the first conference, we had met a little bit and we talked, but you stood up and had a welcome for all of the speakers, and before you were starting your event, and it was kind of this sort of moody room, and you had a little bit, Rowan was playing this cool music, of course, and it was your voice. And I thought, God, her voice it's so soothing yet so powerful. And I was captivated. And then in your practice, when you're teaching, you have blended in, so you've talked about yoga, you've talked about belly dance. There's this melding, this kind of melting pot of all of these different movement practices. So what was the purpose behind, obviously we've talked about yoga and belly fit, and you can go a bit deeper in the, or not belly fit, sorry, belly dance, but what was the inspiration for creating something that was bringing together all of these practices, and what are the other ones that you touch on?
Yeah, well, that is really the key. What you're talking about is exactly the key to our success, to my success as a woman, being embodied, and the success of the business, is that I realized that a lot of the forms of movement that women were practicing were either too yin or too yang, too feminine, too masculine, too active, too passive. And I really wanted something that was in the middle. So for me, the fitness component was absolutely essential, because I saw a lot of people doing movement that was really organic, intuitive, healing, free form, if you will. And that's all fine. But there's a safety and an effectiveness component that's missing in a lot of that. And being the super structured, organized Virgo that I am, I'm like, that's awesome. And also that could be a lot better if we actually applied some of these principles of alignment and structure and, really understanding the fitness component of it. And so I had done all my fitness training. And so I knew the basics of what was required to make it fit into that. But then I had also done the belly dance, and that was my introduction to the feminine, to the goddess, to this way of moving that felt so natural in my body as a woman. And it really worked my body in a way that felt so incredibly fluid and organic, but also structured. And then on that side, I saw, I was performing as a professional belly dance, and I was seeing all these other women performing with me, and I was in these classes and everything. And that was all amazing, but I could see that the benefit in the movement was in just doing the movement. But then if you tried to perform the movement, then it sort of took away a lot of the pleasure and the joy, because now you're focusing on, am I doing it right? And oh my gosh, I'm on this stage, and how's my costume, and the jingly janglies, and that's super fun. And I'm a huge fan of belly dance, and I follow all these belly dancers on Instagram, and it's incredible. But the truth is, Kim, only about 0.5%, if that, 0.005% of the population of women can actually perform those movements.
And I am definitely not in that category.
Exactly. You got to train and study, and there's technique, and there's all this stuff. However, when you take that movement and you simplify it, most women can do a hip circle, a pelvic circle, a rib cage circle, a shoulder shimmy, an undulation, a hip lift, a hip drop, right? A hip sway. Our bodies are designed to do these movements. So again, my Virgo mind stepped in and was like, okay, well, if we can just do these movements to get the benefit of them, to feel amazing, to feel sensual, to feel feminine, then we're going to reap all these benefits without having to worry about learning complex choreography and stepping on a stage and the costumes and all of that. So that you put the fitness and the belly dance together, and that is like a match made in heaven. Then you add the yoga. Now you've got this self-awareness, the breath, the connection, the alignment, and you put all of those together. And well, that's why I'm still here 16 years later. And, women are just in love with what we've created, because it truly is a match made in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. And you add the amazing music. There's great fitness programs out there, but I've always been really, really picky with music. So back when I was an instructor, fitness instructor and teaching classes, I was always known for having, I absolutely had nothing top 40. It was very unique, obscure, weird music that nobody had ever heard of. But so that was kind of like my signature, but it's what I wanted as well. I couldn't stand hearing the radio music that we hear all the time. It wasn't. So Rowan's music, your husband, yes. Talk a little bit about that and how he came, not how he came into the picture per se, but how did it come to be that he became a partner in your business?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking about that because obviously the movement piece is one part, and then the music is the belly fit doesn't happen without the music. And exercise to music is such a huge thing, and because it motivates us, it moves us, it literally, keeps us going from the inside out. And so when we got together, he was like, well, he's been a DJ forever. And I was like, I need music for my classes because literally I was training with the YMCA and they were giving us cassette tapes to practice with, right? And I was like, what is this? And I'm like, I had bought turntables and records, and I was like learning to DJ, and I was like, because I'd been a raver, right? That was my history. I'd been a raver, like dancing all night to this incredible electronic music, and that was the music that I wanted to dance to. So then Rowan came into the picture, and he was already a DJ for many years, and I was like, okay, I don't need to do that. He can do that. So he started creating mixes for me for my classes, and he's also a web developer, of course. So he did all the, the web design, the graphic design, and that's when the brand of Bellyfit really started coming together. And so I created the format of Bellyfit, which is it's very, very structured. So every Bellyfit class that all of our instructors teach around the world is the same structure every time. Opening meditation, warm up, cardio, cool down, a bit of an isolation, then down to the floor for your dedicated strength, your stretch, and then finish with a little meditation. And it was really important to me that it was a very cohesive experience. So I couldn't have breaks in between the tracks, right? It has to be one continuous journey from beginning to end. And so that's where Rowan came in and was like, okay, I'm going to create a 60-minute mix for you that is going to facilitate that exact class structure. And so he produces all of the music. We license, well, he doesn't produce it, but he mixes it. We license it from musicians all around the world and then provide that to our instructors.
Yeah. I love your music. I love it. It's
too.
amazing. So yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the Lotus Lift because of course, so I've already fallen in love with you. Now I've got the music and I'm trying to do the moves. I'm not as fluid as you are, but then you're bringing in this Lotus Lift, and I thought, okay, like, choose my people. Tell us a little bit about where did the Lotus Lift inspiration come from? Why did you call it that? And what does it mean in a belly fit world?
Well, yeah, that's such a great question. And it wasn't something that I really thought about. It happened very organically because I had been studying yoga for so long. And there was Mula Bandha, there was the root lock, the root chakra, and there's Uddiyana Bandha, which I think is similar to what you guys do with the hypopressives, right? There's like the energy centers. Yeah. So I had always been fascinated with the idea of Mula Bandha because I intuitively knew that if a woman doesn't feel safe, that everything is going to be impacted. She's never going to be able to. It's the idea of root to rise. If you're not really firmly rooted, if you don't feel strong and confident in your base, right? We talk about this in Pilates and yoga that you have to set your base up and then expand and extend from there. Otherwise, you're gonna be wobbly. You're not going to be able to. It's a metaphor for life, right? You won't be able to perform the movement properly, as safely and effectively, but also you're not going to be able to expand and manifest the life that you want if you don't have a strong base. So whenever this would come up in yoga or Pilates, even belly dance, a lot of my instructors would talk about that base, that Kegel. And so I was aware that there was this importance of our pelvic floor, but that was pretty much where it ended. I knew Mula Bandha, I knew root chakra, all of that. And when you look at the chakras, they often depict them as lotuses, as these beautiful mandalas that go up the 7 energy chakras. And so for me, I saw this lotus at the base of the pelvis, right, at the root. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, we want to lift this. So Lotus Lift. And I thought, let's make it beautiful, right? Because already so many women are disconnected from that area of their body for all the reasons that you know, and all the reasons that we've learned and we understand now. And so I thought, let's bring our awareness to this area of our body in a really sacred, spiritual, beautiful way. And so Lotus Lift was born.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. And it was really at the time, Pilates has, I would argue, I mean, you could say yoga's been around for many, many years, and because of the Mula Bandha, it's been talked about, but they didn't necessarily, the terminology wasn't associated necessarily with pelvic floor or Kegels as we know today.
No.
So it's been around, the principles or belief has been around a long time. Pilates was probably one of the first that was starting to use the term pelvic floor and giving some cueing and imagery around that.
Yeah.
In terms of other fitness, certainly still, like, arguably, I'm kind of trying to weave my way in there, but it's not really brought in that much to many fitness classes. So I love that it was brought into this movement, and that you are doing also, so the root lock, or the Lotus Lift is a component, but then there's also, as you've talked about, the different hip circles and hip drop and all the different other movements that you are harnessing the power of the pelvis and our center. And as you say, if we don't feel safe, which so many people I work with do not, they don't feel safe in movement. They don't feel safe even just being upright against gravity. They have been told they can't move. Everything is sort of inaccessible for them. They're afraid of making things worse. And your program introduces something that is, I love. It's a very beautiful, and the word you use, feminine approach to feeling safe in your body again, which I love. Yet, it's not in a way that's, if I think about, I don't know what even to compare it to, but if the way that you describe some things, I think, it would be very slow music, and it would kind of be boring. And you absolutely, there's nothing boring about what you do. It's beautiful to watch. It's amazing to feel and do. And as you've got this music that is really flippin' cool and inspiring, and it makes you move. That's when you have really great music, you can't help but move. It's amazing.
It is a really important component. And you brought up a lot there with regards to the music. I curate the music really intentionally. So I listen to tracks all the time, throughout the day when I'm working. We have a shared playlist on Spotify. Rowan will put tracks in there. We have our Bellyfit playlist. And the tracks have to have almost a trance component, right? Because I always say to my instructors, one of the first things that they learn when they're training with us is that your primary objective is to bring women back into their bodies, because we have become so disconnected for all of the reasons. I'm sure all of your listeners know all the reasons that we are disconnected from our bodies, and it is not getting any better. Like, there are just so many reasons now for us to be just constantly in our heads, right? We're always in our heads. So the music, I want the music to be, it has to have almost a bit of a trance component to it, so that we get into this rhythmic movement that feels almost effortless. And I know that it's a tall order, because a lot of women, they're like, I'm exercising, I'm working hard, but it is actually really, really effective when you're repeating these moves over and over again, not so that you get bored. We found that perfect blend of repetition and learning at the same time. So the music gets us into this trance state. And also, like I just said, I tell my instructors we need to bring women into their bodies. So we always start with an opening meditation, and we introduce the Lotus Lift right off the bat. So it is one of the fundamental components of the opening meditation, because like I just said, so many women we're detached from our bodies. If we're detached from our general body, we're detached from our pelvic floors even 10 times more than we're detached from the rest of our body. For all of those reasons, again, there's just so much trauma around that area, which you know all about. So we bring our participants into a full posture check to start. We start at the feet, we go to the knees, we bring them all the way up, so it's root to crown. And then we bring our palms down to our belly. We do 3 belly breaths. And then we say, let's go even deeper into the pelvic floor. And we do this every single class. And I have questioned myself over the years. I'm like, do we still need to do this? Is this still really important? And honestly, I think it's more important now than ever. And I was thinking about this, and I'm like, have we always had so many issues with our pelvic floor? Do we just know about it more now because of social media? Or is our lifestyle as women actually aggravating this condition? And I feel like it's probably a little bit of both, but I mean, this is something that's going to be a part of Bellyfit. And if I was to create any other, fitness program for women, it's got to be a component, because, well, it's our base, and we have to continue bringing our awareness there over and over and over and over again. And what I love about how we introduce it to women is that there's a joy around it. There's a lightness, there's a playfulness. And my instructors have said to me, well, how do I know if my participants are doing it correctly? And I think to myself, well, how do I know if my participants are doing it correctly, right? I can't see if they're doing a Lotus Lift or a Kegel. But that's actually not the point when it comes to Bellyfit. The point is simply to bring their awareness down into that area of their body in the opening meditation. And then throughout the rest of the class, we are reminding them, Lotus Lift, lift that pelvic floor, awareness in your abdominals. We continue to cue that because we know that we can't just think, oh, I'm just going to, activate my pelvic floor and then it's going to stay there and it's all good. And there's also the component of relaxing it, right? We want to be able to relax it. We want to be able to contract it. It's that beautiful balance. So yeah, it's a really integral component.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that, you've started 16 years ago, and when we first met 10 years ago, I still feel like fitness was harder is better, faster, stronger, more intense. Like every single year in the fitness industry, there was something coming out that was harder than the previous year. And there was crazy names around it, and CrossFit and all, and those are all, they all play a role, and there's benefit. At the end of the day, we want people to move, and we want people to move as part of community and do what brings them joy. Yeah. However, there is no instruction about pelvic floor. There's no awareness given to our core, our deep system, to the power of breath, to softening. And so I feel like your program was ahead of, I don't know if ahead of its time is the right word, but ahead of where it was. We needed it a long time ago. And now what's happening in fitness, at least what I have noticed, is things are starting to soften. So I was at the CanFit Pro conference this past summer. I've been going there for the past 10 years, and it was harder. And the last couple of years, it has been more softening, meditation, mind, body. And so I'm thinking you are primed right now, even after 16 years after starting, you are primed right now, I think, to explode, because more and more people are seeking that type of movement, that type of practice, something that is cool with the music, but also having us move in ways that's going to increase our mobility and our flexibility and get our heart rates up, but not all the pounding that we feel like we've always had to do to get stronger,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we were ahead of our time, and I gotta pat myself on the back for sticking around for so long, because I feel like, there were many times when I saw those programs. Another one, oh my gosh, seriously, people, like, can we just chill out for a minute, But they still just kept coming on. But we stuck it through, and I'm definitely seeing a shift now. I'll never forget, gosh, it must have been, I want to say like 7 or 8 years ago, one of my master trainers, I sent her to, I can't even remember, it was a city down in the States to do a Bellyfit instructor training course. And we always had a feedback form that everyone would fill out, and then my master trainers would bring the feedback forms back to me. And I remember one woman wrote, this whole program is silly. It just feels, the entire thing just feels like a warm up. It's not actually a workout. And I remember thinking like, wow. And of course I went and I sort of tried to check her out on Facebook, and I found her, and she was, fitness professional, totally into the let's get it, right? And totally respect that. And I was really heartbroken at the time. I had to really work through, is she right? Is it not intense enough? Do we need to push harder? And I got through that, and I was like, no, this is what this is. And thank goodness that we are figuring it out now, that intensity, not only is it not super effective, but it's actually so damaging to so many women that are already, adrenal fatigued, and their nervous systems are all out of whack. And then you add this super high intensity, fast pounding movement. Some people, don't get me wrong, of course, they're going to find some benefit in that. But I really do believe that in general, so many of us as women, we want to tap more into that softer feminine energy. And yet, like you said, we still want to get a great workout. We still want high energy. So there's this balance of getting high energy without necessarily the high intensity. And I think that's really where Bellyfit shines, because we have this amazing high energy music, and it's almost like you've got the high vibes, but we're still keeping it chill, and it's all about your mindset and your attitude around it. So we're not just throwing our bodies through space without any awareness, without any, clear intention. We're mindful of how we're moving. And so you can actually get an even better, safer, more sustainable workout than if you're just, balls to the walls and not really paying attention how you're moving your body. And so, yeah, we are definitely seeing a surge of interest in Bellyfit, which is so wonderful to see, because when you stick it out this long, you kind of think, I just keep thinking like, but we haven't really got there yet. And I'm like, you know what, we're getting there. And so many women just give us the most amazing feedback. What we hear the most is, this is exactly what I was looking for, because they want to feel powerful. They want to feel strong. They want to feel like a warrior woman, but also a beautiful, sensual goddess at the same time. And so we've really mastered that union.
Yeah. And I feel like that's where I have found benefit for myself as well, because I've very much been, I'm more the tomboy. I wouldn't call myself uber feminine. I've always been the harder fitness, lift weights, run, do all the hard stuff. And I haven't had a lot of fluidity in my life. And I've dabbled in yoga over the years, and have over the past couple have definitely made a much bigger commitment to that, because I guess it's what you're ready for at the time, but yoga used to be boring for me, right? It's not hard. So I would have been that person saying, this feels like a warm up to me, right? Back in the day. And
I understand that.
And now it is what I crave the most, is the more intentional, slow, delicious movement. And
exactly.
So the other population that comes to mind, the world is exploding about menopause, and this conversation we've needed to have conversations around menopause for years, and finally it's getting a voice. And this population is now seeking, because they're getting the awareness about, you talked about adrenals and stress and cortisol, and no more of the hard pounding. And so we need some intensity for our bones. We need some of that, but it doesn't have to be always. And we need to sort of diversify our movement a little. So have you found that any change in the people who are coming to you? Like who is your, I guess, most popular client group?
That is so interesting, because since the beginning, Bellyfit has always attracted perimenopausal and menopausal women. And in the beginning, I used to be like, why are we attracting all of these like older women? Because, this was 16 years ago. I'm 50 now, but, I was still young now. I'm still young now. But we would attract consistently, I'd say about at least 50% of any given Bellyfit class was women in their, late 40s, 50s, and even into their 60s. There was always a component of some 20s and 30s and 40-year-olds, but there was always a large section of older women. Now I'm one of those older women, and I would always wonder why. And I totally get it now, because it is actually designed very well as we get into that space that you were just describing, where we want things to be a little bit more gentle, but we still want a giver. So I can say that not much has changed. We are still attracting that demographic. But what is interesting is that we've started to attract some of the younger ones now. So a little bit more in the 20s and 30s. And I've been racking my brain to try and figure out why this is, but I really think it's because there is a surge in spirituality these days. People are seeking. We are like, give me some meaning in this world, because the shit is hitting the fan on planet Earth, and I need faith, right? So people are seeking, and my daughter's 22, so she's kind of like Gen Z, millennial cusp kind of. But because of social media, because this TikTok generation, they're sharing all of this spiritual wisdom in their way, in their beautiful, 20-something way. And a part of that is connecting with the divine feminine, connecting with your inner goddess. It's a huge thing. So finally, my daughter's like, Mom, you were way ahead of your time. Like, finally she gets it. She's like, oh, Mom, you got to call this influencer. You got to send Bellyfit videos to this woman. She's like so excited about it, right? So all the women that have been doing Bellyfit with us all through the years, they're still coming, and we still continue to attract women that are in those later years. But we are seeing a bit of a resurgence in the other direction. So, and all along, I've always said that you're going to see in a Bellyfit class, you're going to see a 20-something right beside a 70-something. And they are modifying the movement to suit them. And that's something that I've always been really proud about our program, is that you can modify it to suit wherever you're at in your body. And we give permission to do that at the very beginning of the class. So yeah, we're very proud to serve all demographics, and maybe even the 20-somethings are gonna start flocking to Bellyfit now.
Yeah, yeah. I know you have a presence on social media, but are you on TikTok? I actually don't know. Are you on TikTok?
No, I haven't. I just actually hired a social media manager who is going to get us on TikTok. I don't even really know what that means, to be honest. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just feeling comfortable with Instagram, and but I think it's an amazing platform. At first I was like, oh my God, no, I can't. Like I would scroll for 5 minutes and feel like I wanted to just like crawl into a hole. It was just crazy. But I think it's like anything else. You curate your feed, you tell the algorithm what you want to see. And I think there's a place for Bellyfit on TikTok. And I was talking to her about, I said, how do we, are we going to change our content if we're talking to 20 and 30 somethings, or if we're talking to 40 and 50 somethings? And she's like, no, we're not going to change the content. We're just going to put it on different platforms where those people are. I'm like, oh, okay, awesome. I'm in, let's do it. So yeah, you will find us there soon, hopefully.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, TikTok started as a dance platform.
Yep.
Did it not?
Yeah. I think that was definitely one of the main focuses, for sure.
Yeah. And it's still, I don't love the platform, to be honest. However, I love the potential of that platform from a business perspective. Like it is, yeah. So, but the inspiration being from dance, and there still is a big component. A lot of people post cool moves with music. Yeah. And so I think that's going to be a really great platform. Probably one of your best ones, actually. I'm glad you're going to be there.
I hope so. I hope you're right, Kim. We'll see. Check back in with me in a year and we'll see how we've done. Before we wrap up, I want to explore a little bit about, you've mentioned the term divine feminine. So for people that aren't familiar, how do you define the divine feminine? I don't use the term divine feminine so much. That's how a lot of the sort of social media content is referring to it. I say sacred feminine more. And the reason for that is because it feels to me like divine feminine is something sort of out there. It's sort of like, divine feminine, it's sort of, it's a very intangible, ethereal kind of context, I find. So for me, I feel like sacred feminine, it resonates more with me. It's kind of, it's basically the same thing, but really what it means for me is tapping into that deep primal feminine nature that lives within us. So it's an energy, it's a vibration, and it's a philosophy as well. It's really, it's a feeling. And again, it is something that's hard to put into words. And this is where we've seen a huge insurgence of content about the divine feminine, the sacred feminine. There's really this sort of, there's a renaissance of the feminine going on right now, which I have to say, when I first started Bellyfit so many years ago, we weren't hearing, embodied feminine leadership, all of these different terms that are just being thrown around constantly lately. And I love it. I think it's amazing. And for me, the sacred feminine is not something that you can really talk about. It's not something that you can describe necessarily, although I'm writing a whole book on the subject at the moment, which is very, very challenging, I have to say. For me, the sacred feminine is something that you embody. It's something that you experience. It's in the yin field of your embodiment as a woman. And I do feel that we as women we're naturally polarized to the yin field. We're naturally polarized to the sacred feminine, whereas men are naturally polarized to the masculine. We all have yin and yang within us. They exist together, complementary. They cannot exist apart from each other. However, when I look at, I mean, I'm a philosopher. I love deep thinking. I'm constantly examining the nature of reality. And when I look at this reality that we're living in, it's very clear to me that the feminine has been denied, oppressed, suppressed. And I'm not really talking from a feminist perspective. This is much more of a spiritual kind of philosophical perspective, that the energy of the feminine has been suppressed. And now what I was just referring to is there is an uprising of the feminine happening right now, not in an overpowering, dominant kind of way, but in a way that we want the feminine to now rise up to meet the masculine, ultimately for this divine union. That's where the real magic happens. So when I'm talking about the sacred feminine, this is what I'm talking about. It's about embodying this feminine yin energy and then allowing that energy, we can call it Shakti, we can call it, you know, whatever makes sense for you, but it's an embodied experience. And that's why movement is so key when we're looking at the sacred feminine, because movement is what it gets that Shakti spiraling up, and we feel this elation, we feel this joy, we feel this pleasure in our bodies, and then that infuses us as women and affects everything that we touch. So it's not being up here. This is the masculine mental realm, which obviously you and I know we are both very masculine in a lot of ways. We love using our mind, we love understanding, we love strategy, but it only serves us to a certain degree, and then we have to come back down into our bodies, into that yin feminine essence, and then it's the union of the mind and the body together, infused with the spirit and the heart, that really takes us to those next levels. So we're just missing a couple of the pieces, and I feel like that sacred feminine, it's now ready to be remembered, to be re-brought back to the stage. And when we are fully embodied in that, then I think we're gonna see some really big changes on planet Earth. And I think it's a global movement. It's not just me. There's so many people. We're just doing our little part to contribute.
You're doing an amazing part. And that was such a powerful way to wrap this up. I absolutely love everything that you just said there. And it gives me, you know, the world is heavy. The world is heavy. And I'm looking for these ways to get a little bit of hope, and that just, it really brought me out there a little. So thank you so much for that. So where can people find you? You've mentioned instructors around the world. So there are people who are running classes, maybe in fitness centers or community centers or local areas, wherever. Is that true? So people can attend in person, or they can join online and purchase programs. Where can people
Yes,
participate?
exactly. Those are the two main places that people can find Bellyfit. Most of our instructors are across North America, so Canada and the States, and then several different countries in Europe. I think we're in like 30 countries right now. I've kind of lost track. But yeah, so if you're lucky enough to have a Bellyfit class in your area, then definitely go, because it was designed to be a group experience, right? It's one thing to do Bellyfit on your own. It's amazing, highly recommend it. But really, the ultimate experience is when we come together. I mean, women have been coming together and dancing since the very beginning to the beat of that drum, right? I mean, this is in our cells. It's like our cellular memory, you know? So if you can find a Bellyfit class, definitely go check it out. Otherwise, on our website, there's a huge library of videos that you can download. We've got a YouTube channel, Instagram, but definitely bellyfit.com is the hub where people can find us.
The hub. Amazing. And soon to be TikTok.
Soon to be.
Yeah. Alice, you're amazing. I could listen to you all day. And also, for those of you that haven't been watching or aren't watching the video, Alice has been moving this whole time. As she's talking, she dances, and it just makes me want to do the same thing. It just doesn't look quite the same.
It's not about what it looks like, Kim. It's about how it feels.
Exactly. Thank you for the reminder. Thank you so much. I love this conversation. I love what you're doing. I'm excited that there's this resurgence, because the world needs to know more about you and Bellyfit. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for having me, Kim. So much fun.